I was 33 years old when I finally understood that a marriage does not always end with a fight. Sometimes it ends with silence. Not the peaceful kind, not the comfortable kind, but the heavy, aching kind that fills every room and presses against your chest until you forget what it feels like to breathe freely. My name is Emma Carter. I worked as a school counselor in a small town in Michigan, the kind of town where people recognize your car before they recognize your face, where the grocery store cashier asks about your parents, and the high school football games feel like community holidays. From the outside, my life looked settled, stable, safe. I had been married to Ben Carter for 9 years. 9 years. When people heard that number, they usually smiled. "That's wonderful," they'd say. "You're lucky. That's a long marriage these days." And I would smile back, nod politely, and agree. Because how could I explain that 9 years felt both like a blessing and a quiet sentence? Ben worked in IT from home. He was intelligent, reliable, and gentle in ways that felt rare in the world. He remembered to pay the bills on time. He fixed things around the house. He never raised his voice at me. He never insulted me. He never disappeared at night or came home smelling of another woman's perfume. By every logical standard, he was the kind of husband most people pray for. And yet, somewhere along the way, we stopped being lovers and became roommates who shared a last name. Our days followed a rhythm so predictable it felt mechanical. Morning coffee and silence. A brief kiss on the cheek. Have a good day. Work. Dinner. Television. Bed. And always the space between us grew wider. We didn't fight. We didn't scream. We didn't accuse. But we also didn't touch. The absence of conflict looked like peace, but it wasn't. It was avoidance. It was emotional starvation. At night, I would lie beside him and listen to his breathing, wondering how a man could be so close to me physically, and yet feel so impossibly far away. Sometimes I would turn toward him, hoping he might reach for me. Sometimes I would wait. Most nights I turned back to the wall and stared into the darkness. I began to feel invisible. Not in a dramatic way. Not in a way that demanded attention. But in the quiet, hollow way that slowly erodes your sense of worth. I still loved Ben. But love without connection becomes loneliness. And loneliness inside a marriage is the most painful kind there is. People assume that emotional distance arrives suddenly. Doesn't. It arrives like dust. Layer by layer. Day by day. Until one morning you wake up and realize you cannot remember the last time you laughed together. Ben and I used to laugh. We used to talk for hours. We used to plan trips, dream about the future, imagine the kind of life we would build. Now, our conversations were functional. Did you pay the electricity bill? What's for dinner? Did you call the plumber? Necessary words. Empty words. I found myself talking more to my students than to my husband. As a school counselor, I spent my days listening to teenagers describe their fears, their heartbreaks, their confusion. I encouraged them to speak, to express, to be honest. And yet, I went home and swallowed my own emotions every night. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sometimes, while sitting in my office, I would catch my reflection in the glass of the door. A woman in her early 30s. Tired eyes. A careful smile. And I would think, is this really all there is? I wasn't unhappy enough to leave. But I wasn't happy enough to stay. And that is the most dangerous place a person can be. Ben was not cruel. He was not careless. He was simply distant. And distance, when left unspoken, becomes neglect. I remember one evening in particular. It was raining softly outside. The kind of rain that makes the world feel smaller. We were sitting on opposite ends of the couch, a television show playing that neither of us was truly watching. I reached for his hand, not in a dramatic way, just a simple, quiet gesture. He held it for a moment, and then gently pulled away to adjust his phone. He didn't even realize what he had done, but I did, and something inside me closed a little more. That night I cried in the bathroom so he wouldn't hear me. I pressed my hand over my mouth, not because I was afraid of him, but because I was afraid of the truth I didn't know how to say. I wasn't angry at Ben. I was grieving the marriage we used to have. Our intimacy had not vanished overnight. It had faded. Slowly. Silently. First it was exhaustion. Then stress. Then not tonight. Then weeks. Then months. Until touching each other felt unfamiliar. until even holding hands felt like crossing a boundary we no longer knew how to navigate. I began to question myself. Was I unattractive now? Had I changed too much? Was I asking for too much? Or was I simply asking for the wrong thing from the wrong version of the man I married? Ben never rejected me harshly. He rejected me gently, with silence, with distraction, with distance. And gentle rejection hurts more than anger, because you cannot fight it. You can only endure it. There were moments when I considered leaving, not because I wanted another man, but because I wanted to feel like a woman again, to feel desired, to feel connected, to feel alive. But then I would look at Ben, sitting quietly at his desk, focused on his work, and I would remember the man who once held my hand in public, who once whispered plans for our future, who once made me feel like I was the center of his world. And I would stay, because hope is a stubborn thing. People often ask, why didn't you talk to him? The truth is I was afraid. Afraid that if I spoke, I would hear what I was not ready to accept. Afraid that the silence, painful as it was safer than the answers. So I learned to live with the quiet, until one evening, the quiet became unbearable. I used to believe that silence was safer than truth, that if we didn't speak about the distance between us, it somehow wouldn't grow. I was wrong. The night Ben finally spoke, nothing dramatic was happening. No argument. No tears. No storm outside. Just the soft hum of the television and the quiet rustle of folded laundry in my hands. I remember thinking how ordinary everything felt, and how extraordinary the moment would become. Ben sat down beside me. Not too close. Not too far. But closer than he had in weeks. Emma, he said, his voice low, careful. I've been thinking. I didn't look at him at first. About what? I asked. About us. Something in his tone made my chest tighten. I know you're not happy, he continued. I know I haven't been able to connect with you the way I used to, and I don't know how to fix it. For a long moment I said nothing. I was afraid that if I spoke I would break. But the truth finally slipped out. You're right, I whispered. It's not working. And I'm tired of pretending that it is. That was the first honest conversation we had had in years. Ben exhaled slowly. Then he said something I will never forget. I want to try something different. I turned toward him. Different how? He hesitated, searching for words. I've been reading about couples who try unusual ways to reconnect. Experiences that help them understand what the other person is missing. My heart began to race. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I asked. He looked down. I want you to meet someone. Just once. Someone I choose. I'll be there. Not in a strange way. I want to understand you again. First I laughed. Then I cried. It sounded impossible. Painful. Ridiculous. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Because deep inside I was curious. And that terrified me. A week later Ben handed me a small piece of paper. His name is Ryan, he said. I've spoken with him. He's safe. He understands the boundaries. I wanted to tear the paper in half. I wanted to run. But I didn't. Because something in me was already broken. And this felt like the only way to see what remained. The night arrived. Ryan was calm, polite, and kind. Not charming. Not intense. Just present. We sat in a quiet Airbnb. Ben stayed nearby, silent, holding a glass of water like a shield. There was no passion. No temptation. Only conversation. Ryan asked me how I felt. And for the first time in years I told the truth. I spoke about loneliness. About feeling invisible. About missing the woman I used to be. I cried. I laughed. And in his gentle attention, I felt something I had forgotten. To be seen. At one point he reached for my hand. That was all. But it was enough. Because something inside me finally opened. Ben watched. And in his eyes I saw understanding. Not jealousy. Not anger. Understanding. On the drive home we said nothing. But once we were inside Ben turned to me. Thank you, he said quietly. For trusting me. I didn't realize how much pain you were carrying. And that was the moment everything changed. Over the next weeks we talked. Really talked. About fear. About distance. About how we lost each other. We went to couples therapy. Not to repair something broken but to build something honest. And Ryan, we never met again. He was never meant to stay. He was only a mirror. Today Ben and I are still together. Stronger than before. Not because we avoided pain, but because we finally faced it. Because sometimes love is not loud. Sometimes love is uncomfortable. Sometimes love begins the moment silence ends. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe for more real emotional stories. Because sometimes the quietest love stories are the ones that stay with us the longest.